Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Hunter Lee. And normally he's the CEO and founder of Regatta Storage. Normally we do these over Zoom, but he and I actually live fairly close to each other, so we thought we'd try this in person wherever we work in San Mateo, California today. Good afternoon, Hunter. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Well, thanks for coming down to San Mateo and doing this. This is a lot of fun. So to start with, why don't you tell us what Regatta Storage is all about, what you do, what problem you're solving?
Sure. So at Regatta Storage, we're taking S3 buckets that people are using and we're transforming them into unlimited local file systems that provide instant access to data sets. So we're working with AI companies who want to do training on data sets that are in S3, but they don't want to have to wait for that data to download in order to start the analysis.
There's a lot there.
Yes.
So S3, so you're with AWS,
Yes.
correct? And are there plans to go to the other cloud provider? We won't mention them by name, but we know who they are.
Yes, we do. And we are in the process of supporting any S3 compatible storage system. So the other cloud providers have some, Cloudflare has some. There's a lot of these third-party S3 compatible storage systems.
Oh, very cool. And who would be your typical customer? So just to give us an idea, because I mean, I've written applications that use S3, but am I a potential customer? Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really looking to transform the way that people are using storage in the cloud. So where we're finding a lot of traction right now is with AI researchers who are doing kind of iterative tasks with models in things like Jupyter Notebook. And they want to build on data sets they already have. They want to produce outputs that then they can share easily with other coworkers. And having something that is connected to S3 and doesn't run out of capacity like a local disk is really, really helpful for these kinds of people.
So it's basically storage, you only pay for what you need for lack of a better commercial.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so rather than having to spin up a local device of a certain capacity, you have something that just expands to whatever your application uses.
Oh, perfect. And I think what you said, you mount it, correct?
Correct.
So it's basically a Unix mount, or is there any Windows equivalent?
It is. So right now we're using the NFS protocol.
Okay.
So we can mount it on Unix. Windows also has an NFS client. You can mount it on Windows. You can mount it on Mac and kind of coordinate across all of your servers.
Wow. And I mean, I've done AWS and S3, and it's not overly expensive, but it's not overly cheap. So how does it compare price-wise?
So we are 90% cheaper than actually transferring data to an EBS disk, for example.
Okay.
And the reason why is because when you provision local storage, you have to have so much more than you need. And we often talk to customers who are only using 10 or 20% of their EBS volumes, and transitioning to something that only charges them based on usage sees savings up to 90%.
It's actually interesting because I know this because we're literally like 2 miles from this place, but I don't know if you know this, the largest network in the world is Visa. Their headquarters is 2 miles from here. And they do network bandwidth based on the day after Thanksgiving. And then the rest of the time, they still need it, but they never need that much. So it's kind of the same concept, I would say, right?
Exactly. A lot of customers and a lot of workloads are very spiky, is what we say. You might need 5 gigabytes on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday you need 10 gigabytes, and on Thursday you need 1 gigabyte. And traditionally you'd have to provision for peak. But what the cloud promises us is this ability to only pay for your usage that exactly matches what you need. And we're like really excited to be offering that in a local storage product.
Very cool. So how did Regatta Storage start? Because I saw you worked at AWS. There's another big company. I forget the other one you worked at. Netflix, yes. And they have a little bit of storage.
Yes. Yeah, so I spent the past 9 years working in cloud storage. I spent 8 years working for Amazon on a product called the Elastic File System, which is a Unix-based mount that is actually the only file system in the world that charges customers just on usage. And then I went to Netflix and I worked on their cloud storage team, working like directly with application developers and trying to understand their needs. So throughout this time, I identified a need for customers who wanted something that just worked. EFS really fit for developers who wanted to try something and not have to pay a lot for it.
Mhm.
But as customers expanded, they were finding it was too expensive.
Mhm.
It was too slow, and they really wanted to use S3.
Mhm.
So after having all of those conversations, after seeing how all of these things were built, I figured that we could do something in the space to solve for this need and make basically the easiest storage system ever created for the cloud.
Yeah, and if anybody's ever done a mount or
Yes.
right, it's pretty easy. It's one command, right?
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure you can automate that.
Yes.
So, cool. And I think you've also mentioned that it performs better than standard S3. Is that correct?
That's right. So standard S3s, about 30 milliseconds to get your data. And that's why S3 is so low cost.
Mhm.
But a lot of times what we find is that teams need their data to be hotter than that when they're actually using it.
Mhm.
So we cache the data, both for reads and for writes, in a high-speed caching layer. And that provides 30x lower latencies when people are using frequently used data or doing writes.
Well, so would you compare it to SSD?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. That's really impressive.
Yes.
In the cloud? Very cool. So let's talk about your journey now, right? You're originally from Atlanta, correct?
Yeah.
When did you move to the Bay Area?
So I moved to the Bay Area. The Regatta was accepted to Y Combinator's fall batch, which started September 29th. So we moved to the Bay Area on September 26th after a couple of weeks of frantic packing.
Wow.
Yes, and it's been wonderful. It is like almost stepping into the future in some ways. Since being here, I've ridden in a Waymo. I have seen robots accomplish crazy tasks. It does feel like you're in a different kind of place to be around all of these builders and technologies and companies.
Yes. No, I moved here in 2000 and Google was just starting that. Back then there was SGI and all these and Yahoo and I mean obviously you've driven right by Oracle, which you can't miss Oracle when you're here. So very cool. So you've been here like 6 weeks.
6 weeks, yes.
Wow. So are you I mean, how do you like the area so far? And I mean, Atlanta's a very nice place too. So did you grow up in Atlanta?
I did, yes. So I grew up in the Atlanta area. I went to school in Virginia, and then I ended up working for Amazon in Boston. So I was crawling my way northward up the East Coast. During COVID, I'd gone back home to Atlanta to be near family. And now I'm out here.
Wow. It's when I came from Buffalo, so
yes, it's a lot nicer weather than the Northeast.
You think? Well, this time of year they're about the same, you'll notice.
Yes.
And in about a month it will change.
Yes.
Cool. So your company, Regatta Storage, it's really brand new, correct?
It's brand new. So
and you're going through Y Combinator now, right?
correct.
So that should end in how many months?
Mid-December. So we're about halfway through the batch right now.
And so what happens? You're done. Y Combinator's through. What's the next step?
So Y Combinator has been a really inspiring, I would say, experience to be around all of these people who have been so successful in the startup space and be around so many companies who are doing such innovative work in the tech space. So it's been a great, they're called an accelerator. It has been a great accelerator for the company. We're hoping to close some fundraising at the end of Y Combinator, and then we'll probably ramp up with a couple more engineers and just continue to move faster.
Wow, and for those that don't really know Y Combinator, I assume they're going to help you get that funding, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's one of the big advantages. And it's hard to get into Y Combinator, true?
Yes, I think that they have an acceptance rate that's less than 0.5% at this point.
Oh, it's that? I didn't know it was that low.
It's very low.
Wow. So, I mean, what was about your solution that they said, yeah, let's take a look at this. Let's help this guy build this company.
I think, and obviously I don't have so much insight into their admissions process. And I think like many people in the batch, when I applied to Y Combinator, I was not expecting to get in. It was certainly a surprise, an exciting surprise, but it was not something that I expected. I think what worked for me and my application was just the match between my background in the space and the idea. You don't see a lot of companies today going out and building storage products. And so I think coming to Y Combinator with something that is so such foundational infrastructure, and it coming from a person who's been working in that space for 9 years, after having seen that this is kind of a problem that no company is addressing, was what made it interesting for them.
Yeah, and I will give you a compliment. I've met other Y Combinator founders, and they do take you into consideration. You had to impress them. So that's a feather in your cap.
Yes.
Yes. And it's interesting. And when you talk about, it's kind of like S3, but it's not really are you competing with S3? Are you partnering with S3? How would you, or do you do both depending upon the customer?
I think that the way that I look at the market is that this is an unmet need by the cloud providers right now.
Yeah.
So this is not a storage product that you could buy from Amazon or Google or Microsoft. I think in the fullness of time, the world will change and this will begin to be how we use storage in the cloud. But for now, it's not competition because really it's a feature that I think customers of Amazon would want, and it would actually make S3 more valuable for them.
Yeah, well, and I think it will make the cloud providers more valuable, right?
Yes.
Right, because you have to think, when you're designing an application, no matter what application you're building, you're going to need storage, especially if you're doing an AI application. So now, am I going to, host that myself, or am I going to build everything around one of the big cloud providers? And I think that's where eventually that's what it'll be. Now, if you're cheaper and slower than S3, eventually you could replace them, or maybe you could become S3, if you know what I mean.
Well, we'll see what the future holds.
I know.
But it is an exciting time to be in the storage space because with all of the excitement around AI, data sets are growing like much faster than companies can actually wrangle them. And people need to process that data that's growing even faster than they had before.
Yeah, very cool. So December, you said mid-December, like say December 15th, you finish Y Combinator, and we'll be generous to say January 15th, you get funding.
Yeah.
What's next? What do you do? You're going to hit the ground running. What do you do?
So we're looking to build the highest performance file system in the cloud.
Okay.
We really want to build something that replaces local disks for our customers. And that means that we need to have extremely low latencies. And in addition to that, we want to replace some of these high performance, really expensive clustered file systems. Like a lot of companies struggle to manage Lustre file systems. Google has a product called Parallel Store. These products provide hundreds of gigabytes per second of throughput and millions of IOPS. And so we want to be able to do both of those things. We're working on the latency piece now. Probably January 15th, we're going to see how scalable we can be with the goal to become the most scalable file system.
Very cool. And then let's just say 5 years from now, where do you see Regatta Storage being?
Well, the other interesting thing about storage products is if you think about them from a purely infrastructure point of view, what we're doing for customers and teams is we're doing the hard, painful work of keeping the servers alive, making sure the data is available and durable, and just making sure that the service is always performing well. But at the end of the day, our servers are mostly going to be using disks. It's not a very CPU intensive process.
True.
So I think 5 years down the line, what we'd like to explore is taking all of the CPU space that we have purchased but are probably underutilizing and selling that back to our customers so that customers can run things like Spark jobs or other data intensive tasks in a purely serverless way at lower cost and better performance than any other provider because we also have their storage.
Very cool. That's good. Well, I wish you the best of luck. It's a great idea. Having dealt with some of the other products, I do know some of the challenges, I'll say, right? Especially if you want something performant. So best of luck to you and to Regatta Storage. And thank you for coming down here today to join me. And welcome to the Bay Area.
Thank you so much, Mark.